Thousands of years in the future, a desert planet, giant sandworms, an evil baron, a greedy empire, and a child destined for greatness. This is Dune. What is good, YouTube? My name is Ash Porter and welcome back to my channel. It is so good to have you with us today. And today we have a special treat of a book. We are looking at a book that many would describe as like the godfather of sci-fi, or even just outright the best sci-fi book ever. This is Dune by Frank Herbert, and I will tell you now, this book is next level. As usual, this book will be split into two sections. The first part, which will be kind of my non-spoilery review, why you should read the book, some of the basic details. And then the second part will be me delving a bit more into details that I loved about the book that are likely to have spoilers in. So if you haven't read it, avoid that second section. Also, just a quick heads up. If I pronounce anything wrong, if any of you watching are like hardcore Dune enthusiasts and I pronounce anything wrong, I'm really sorry. I'm just rubbish at pronunciations. Dune is set in the distant future. Like we're talking 10, 20,000 years from now. And where humans have colonized the known universe. We have spread out all over. Earth basically doesn't exist anymore from what I understand. And there is an empire which controls all of that. And our protagonist, Paul, is the son of a duke who has been given a new planet to look after, the planet of Arrakis. On the surface, Arrakis may look like a dead planet with not much going for it. It is basically just a desert. However, what it does have going for it is that it is the source of this drug basically called Mulane, or also known as spice in the books. And this spice, the whole universe is basically, or at least the upper class, middle and upper class of the human race throughout the universe are addicted and reliant on it, and you cannot come off spice once you start taking it. It is also a planet home to the people called the Fremen, who have a prophecy about a coming Messiah. Right guys, I need to be honest with you. Before September 2020, I had never even heard of Dune or anything to do with it. I'd never heard of it. Literally zero. And it was only because I saw the trailer for the new film they've made and is coming out later this year that I was like, oh, this looks like something worth reading. And to be fair, the film has an absolutely madness of a cast. Like we're talking Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Jason Momoa, Josh Brolin, Oscar Isaac, just to name a few. Like that is an incredibly strong cast. So I was like, I need to know what this film, which is picking up hype, is all about. Now, I will say, before the film hasn't come out at this point, and now I've read the book, Timothée Chalamet honestly could be like one of those like Daniel Radcliffe as Harry Potter or like Sir Ian McKellen as Gandalf type castings where it could literally just be perfect. But obviously we're gonna have to wait and see if the film is any good. I really hope it's good. I really hope it sticks to the book, but let's see. Now to talk about the book, and again I need to be really honest here, that for me, I don't read a lot of sci-fi. It's not my main genre. My preferred sort of genre in fiction is like historical fiction or like sort of medieval type fantasy, that kind of stuff. And so sci-fi isn't something I've read a lot. And I will say that this book, because of that maybe, took me about 100 pages to really get into it, to start enjoying it and to get my head around. And so I feel like if sci-fi is new to you, just keep going with it because you will pick it up and start to enjoy it. What also made this hard is that right from the word go, Herbert is throwing so many like phrases, words that are he's made up for Dune and for this series. What's really good is actually at the back of this book it has like this section where it has all these words and an explanation which you can refer to, but it still takes you a while to work it out. Like, what the hell is a Gom Jabbar or a Kwisatz Haderach or who's Muad'Dib or the Bene Gesserit? Like, all these kind of stuff. Once you know, you pick it up and it becomes easy, but it does take time to get into this book because of things like that. But once you do overcome this hurdle, there is no denying that Herbert has created a rich world, a rich universe, which is absorbing, immersive, and especially the storyline is just incredible. But also, he covers some really interesting topics in this book. He covers things like genetic memory, prescience, religious control, addiction, and loads more stuff. And it's so interesting to see these topics covered within sci-fi. And then the final thing I will say before we go into the spoiler section is that what I really enjoyed about Dune is that, honestly, you can read this book as a standalone book. If you don't want to commit to a big series, because I know when you, for me, I started searching, I was like, there's like 1 billion books to do with this series, like sequels and all this kind of stuff. But actually, I read it and I was like, you can read that as a standalone book. It is enjoyable by itself, and so you can enjoy it without committing to the wider series. And I think that's a really strong quality in an opening book. But anyway, read the book and let's get into some spoilers. Guys, just before we get into the spoiler section, I just want to say again, thank you so much for watching this video so far. And if you are enjoying it, please consider dropping the video a like. And if you're not already, subscribe to the channel because it really helps me out and it's really nice to see that support. But anyway, let's carry on with the video. The first thing I want to talk about in this section is something which you just can't not talk about, and it's the main character, your protagonist, your boy, Paul. He's now the emperor of the universe. He's Muad'Dib, he's the messiah of Dune. What I think I really enjoyed about this book so much, and particularly Paul's character, is that I don't think he's like a lot of protagonists in book series, in the sense that at the start you're like, okay, here's your main character, here's your boy, you really like him, you're like, he's this young kid learning, you know bad stuff is coming, you can just sense that, like, he's gonna get messed up, that life is gonna get hard, even from his privileged position. But his journey and his transformation, not just, you know, there's all the big stuff like him embracing his destiny, him starting to see the future and the visions and the fact that he can see all these different futures and he has to decide which one he needs to choose. And the whole time he's kind of fighting off this idea that people are going to flock to him as a messiah and that there's going to be a horrific jihad across the universe because of it. And you really like Paul because he spends this whole time fighting that. But I think by the end of the book, if I'm really honest, I'm not sure I loved Paul as a person. Like, there's part of it where he is almost like he was doomed, but he still had to make those choices, and his personality changed because of the plot, because of what happened to him. And I think that was so interesting because so often we're left to feel so good about the protagonists, these like fairy tale characters who you just can't help but love. But Paul was different, you know, there were so many times where I wasn't sure about his decision making, where yeah, and like I said, by the time, literally those final few pages where he takes the throne and he becomes emperor, I'm not sure I enjoyed Paul. But what I love about that is that I think that's okay. You don't have to love a protagonist the whole time, and we know there's more books to come, and I think it's just it was such an enjoyable character arc that I haven't seen often. But alongside that, I have to say you can't help but admire his character, because he is almost doomed, destined into this future, and as soon as he starts seeing these futures and getting that prescience, you can see how grim it is. Like, you know, we talk about sometimes he was like, oh, I'd love to know what happens in the future. After reading this book, I'm like, future, you be the future. I'm just going to handle the now. Because it feels like there's this weight. There's this, that he can't settle, that he can't find peace because he knows what is coming. And I think you can only admire him, pity him, and think, what a strong character. But also it just shows, yeah, we don't need to know the future. Another small thing which I loved about this book, which, because I just haven't seen much of it anywhere, to be honest, and I think he does it really well, is this idea of, like, he doesn't call it this, but I'm calling it like genetic memory. And so we see this exemplified in sort of the Reverend Mothers, and then specifically in Alia. I hope I pronounce this right. Alia, whatever. And how, you know, she like comes alive, wakes up in consciousness when she's like a month old in the womb. And she's like smarter, more aware than any human from being like when she's a fetus, basically. And she has all these past lives, all this genetic memory dating back like millennia and millennia and millennia available to her. And I think it's just a really incredible concept, because in many ways it feels like that's haunting to have all those different voices inside your head, all those access to all that, but also how incredible, how much knowledge, how much wisdom you would have to understanding the past so that then you can define the future better. But it's also weird that she she knows all her mum's experiences, and so she like fully knows all her mum's like sexual experiences and things like that. It gets a little bit weird. And obviously this is sci-fi, it's fantasy, it's not real, but it does make me think like maybe there's something in this. Is it possible that we just haven't unlocked it yet, that we haven't found that maybe there could be some kind of genetic memory? I know it's very distant, very far off, very sci-fi-y, but I think it's a really, really interesting concept, which I love the way Herbert approached it. And then the final thing I want to talk about is, again, it's something really unique that Herbert has, which you don't see in a lot of sci-fi. I mean, the only sci-fi I really know is like films and TV shows. I haven't read a lot, but it's always generally technology advances and we embrace technology. You know, in Star Wars, there are robots everywhere. But in this, they've gone past that. It's like they spent 10,000 years advancing technology till they had robots, they had AI. And then there's this thing, I think, called the Butlerian Jihad, where humans decided, you know what, this is so dangerous. And they went on this massive jihad and they destroyed all computers, all tech, like that kind of technology that can think for itself. And now they've almost gone back in time to a more primitive state. And I think it's such an interesting concept. But then it's not like they've gone back in time, because actually they've still colonized the whole of space and they still need to be able to live like that. And so humans evolve and they adapt both naturally but also through force methods. There are genetic mutations, people are trained in different ways, and they seem to be able to advance humanity because of this rejection of this technology. Two clear examples of this in the book, and I know in future books I think there are more examples of these genetic mutations and changes, but are the mentats, who are like people who are trained from a young age basically to be human supercomputers. They're like specialized in logic, and then they serve a sort of like people like dukes and barons and people like that. But it's a really interesting concept because it's almost like their brain is trained in such a logical, specific way, but also it feels like they've unlocked more of their brain capacity. Then you also have the B'nai Gesserit, these women who are this powerful organization who are basically trying to create the perfect human race through breeding and genes, and they themselves are pretty advanced in terms of the fact they can control their bodies in really unique ways. Like they have control of every single muscle and fiber in their body. They can read body language, sound. They can use this thing called the voice, which is almost like control through speech, and it's an advance of like human evolution. And I think this kind of stuff is what makes Dune so unique and so like good, is because it's so unlike any other sci-fi. It's so unlike anything personally I've seen. I don't, obviously, again, I've said I don't have a wide knowledge of sci-fi, but I think the concepts he covers are so interesting, and it makes Dune such a good read. In my opinion, Dune really lives up to the hype. Like I said earlier, as someone who knew nothing about it, I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I really recommend you get your hands on it and read this before the film comes out, because remember, the books are always better. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I have been Ash Porter, and I'll see you next time.